After Sauron's defeat in the Battle of the Last Alliance, many of his enemies believed that he was entirely vanquished, for his armies were destroyed, and his once great land of Mordor lay in ruin. Yet even after such an agonizing defeat, Sauron's spirit survived and lingered on, too weak to reform, though still hell-bent on conquering Middle-earth. For the next 1,000 years, his spirit lay low, until he was able to recover his physical form, and he appeared as a new entity known as the Necromancer of Dol Guldur. Hello friends, it's Card here, and in today's episode we'll be unraveling Sauron's strategy behind his appearance as the Necromancer. So Sauron's time as the Necromancer played a crucial part in his plans to dominate Middle-earth, and it was an incredibly strategic move that allowed him to pursue several goals at once. For the men of Gondor were still very cautious, and they were afraid that Sauron had survived and that he could return to the land of Mordor, and so they built many watchtowers and fortresses such as Durtang and Cirith Ungol to keep watch over this land. It would have been foolish for Sauron to try and return to Mordor, for his presence would have surely been noticed by Gondor, and they would have intervened before he could re-establish his dominion. By taking up a new persona, that of the Necromancer of Dol Guldur, Sauron was able to recover his strength and spread his influence, without drawing attention to his return or raising suspicion amongst his enemies. At first, not even the White Council suspected that the Necromancer was Sauron, for they believed that it was one of the Nazgul instead, and this made them more complacent, and it allowed Sauron to set up a stronghold in the north with very little resistance. If Sauron had openly declared himself in Dol Guldur, the forces of the west would have surely rallied their armies to defeat him, for they knew what a dire threat he was to their survival, while as the Necromancer, he was able to seem like a lesser, enigmatic evil and a localized threat to Mirkwood, and not one that could threaten the very existence of the Free People. In fact, it would take the White Council over 1,800 years to finally confirm that the Necromancer was indeed Sauron in disguise. And throughout all of this time, the Nazgul had already prepared Mordor for Sauron's return. This was all part of Sauron's plan, for while he reigned as the Necromancer in Dol Guldur, he aimed to weaken Gondor's hold and watch over Mordor through proxy attacks, such as when the Nazgul attacked and conquered Minas Ithil, or the Great Plague, which swept out from the east and decimated Gondor's population. Now while Sauron occupied Dol Guldur, he started to summon evil creatures and beings to Mirkwood, and this allowed him to establish a new sphere of evil in the northern lands. Ever since the fall of Angmar, there was no real threat that could destabilize these northern regions, and this was an area in which some of Sauron's greatest foes lived, such as the elves of Rivendell, Mirkwood and Lothlorien, and the dwarfs of Durin's line. By establishing a strong outpost at Dol Guldur, Sauron would be able to distract and withstand these elven and dwarven kingdoms, and his armies would prevent them from interfering with his southern campaigns. This plan had actually worked out quite well, for during the War of the Ring, Sauron had ordered his armies in Dol Guldur to attack the kingdoms of Lothlorien, Mirkwood and Erebor, and this assault prevented these factions from sending reinforcements to Gondor. There is one other reason for Sauron's time as the Necromancer, and why he decided to occupy the land of Mirkwood in particular, for even though he had slowly begun to recover his strength, he was still significantly weaker without the One Ring in his possession, and he knew that Isildur was killed near the Gladden Fields, which led him to believe that he could still find the One Ring in this land, or in the nearby Anduin River, and so Sauron decided to occupy the fortress of Dol Guldur, which provided him with easy access to this area, and he would order his forces to search this land, in the hopes that they might find the One Ring. He also chose to use the disguise of the Necromancer to avoid raising suspicion, for the wise knew where Isildur had perished, and if he was less subtle, they might have guessed Sauron's intent earlier and tried to prevent him from recovering the One Ring, or worse, they might have even claimed it as their own. This was actually why Saruman had finally accepted the White Council's proposal to attack Dol Guldur, for he discovered that some of the servants of Dol Guldur were searching this area for the One Ring, and he hoped to interrupt and stop their search so that he could find it himself and become its new master. All of these reasons that we've discussed really help us to appreciate how strategic Sauron was, and how his plans were interconnected and could unfold over hundreds of years. His time as the Necromancer ultimately allowed him to establish an evil realm in the north, while he recovered his strength, searched for the One Ring, and prepared Mordor for his return. And all of these key factors would allow him to once again emerge as a dire threat to the free people. Now it's worth mentioning that when Tolkien first wrote about the character of the Necromancer in The Hobbit, he wasn't sure how the story of Sauron would unfold in The Lord of the Rings, and so he had to find a way to fit him in as the persona of the Necromancer. Overall, I think he did an incredible job at it, cause it really fits Sauron's motives and narratives, and we get to see how diabolical and what a strategic genius Sauron was. If you're interested in learning more about Dol Guldur, or perhaps the history of Mordor, I'll be leaving links to some of my videos above. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Do you think it was smart of Sauron to lie low as the Necromancer in Dol Guldur, or could he have come up with a better plan? And if so, what would it be? And can you think of any other benefits that Sauron might have reaped by disguising himself as the Necromancer? As always, I'd like to thank my patrons who have really helped to elevate this channel. It wouldn't be the same without you. And I would like to express how grateful I am for your support, especially our Wizard-Tier Patrons, T-Gorman, Mike Feeney, Roland Myrvold, and Jacob Williams. If you too would like to help support this channel while unlocking some cool perks, I'll be leaving a link to my Patreon page in the video description below. I'll also be leaving links to our Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and Twitter communities, so follow us if you'd like to have some extra Lord of the Rings content in your day-to-day lives. As always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to join our fellowship today. I hope to see you all in my next video, where together we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.